Welcome to Healing SIBO and IBS with Better Health by Monica. Today is a special episode. It's not just me talking today. I have a special guest. Ian Morris is with me. Ian is the founder, creator, and musician for Listening to Smile. Listening to Smile is a frequency-minded music company, and we'll talk about what that means in the podcast. But not only does Listening to Smile create music for the purposes of healing, they have wellness albums, music for sonic meditation, binaural beats, which we'll get into, but the way in which Listening to Smile conducts their business and creates and resells their music is really special and something that is very freedom-minded, freedom thinking, and I want to touch on that at the end at least because I want my listeners to know about that. I recently have become an affiliate for Listening to Smile. I heard about Ian through the Paul Chek Living 4D podcast, which I highly recommend you guys check out. We're not going to be able to get into the in-depth conversation that you guys had. And so I really encourage people to go to Paul Chek's podcast episode that I'll link to in the show notes, because it was really just informative and interesting to learn about how music has impacted our history and how it can help us heal. I am honored to be an affiliate for this company. I just started using the music in my Move to Heal sessions with my clients. The last week, I did my first session with the music, and my client absolutely loved it. She said she felt her intestines just completely relax, and she almost felt like she had a bit of an opening experience. And this is just the beginning of it. So it's super exciting to see results happen with the music, with the movement, and have that marriage in the sessions. So that was really cool. I myself have noticed some changes in my anxiety with certain trigger points. I've listened to the music at the dentist, which is very stressful for me. I've listened to it on the plane. I recently went to Chicago over the past weekend, and I could feel my body really relaxing. Sleep is a big trigger as well. And not only do I feel my nervous system shifting, but I feel my creativity heightening. I'm compelled to write. I'm compelled to come up with new ideas. And I've missed that about music. And so it's been a really cool exploratory experience for me and my clients. But I am a novice. I'm very new to this concept of frequency-minded music. So rather than me explaining it, in my perspective, I'm very grateful to have Ian here to help us all better understand how music can help us heal. So welcome to the podcast, Ian. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. I would love to start with your story. I'd love to hear about your health journey and how music specifically has helped you, and what your relationship to music is and was prior to creating this company.
Yeah. Well, I was really blessed that my dad was a musician, and I was exposed to a lot of music. So before this, I grew up listening to a large plethora of music. I mean, everything from roots and blues music to jazz and fusion music, and then, a lot of classic rock and things like that my father exposed me to. So I think he had a collection of like 2,000 albums, something like that.
Wow.
So there was constantly music in the house, and he played music and played a lot of instruments. So I was really blessed to have that as my introductory, time into music. And so I had just really started getting into music and exploring different instruments and really, playing music. And then, I started working in a nonprofit, working with children with the underserved community with music and art lessons. And so that was my first introductory as far as watching music and art transform people's lives, where you start saying there's something more here than entertainment. It was changing personalities. Their thoughts and feelings were evolving into more positive states, from places of desperation or depression and things of that nature. So you watched the children change, through this exploratory, conditioning that was taking place in the heart and in the mind. Just a lot of release work and healing. And so it was very powerful to see that. And then fast forward 2011, 2012, I started getting ill. Just couldn't figure out what was going on, and, going to different specialists and doctors, and ultimately got diagnosed with MS and colon cancer. And during the initial phases of all that, I remember there was a time I went about 12 days without eating food because it was more painful to eat and digest than it was to just be hungry. And so there was a lot of cramping and pains in my gut, and it was just very painful. And it was just, there's no other word for it. Right. It was just not a fun time. And so sound really helped me to gain control of my mind. And I think I'm asked the question a lot, like, what is the most important thing to get started healing? And my answer is always mindset. So I think this helped me to come to terms with moving from a victim mode into a more empowered mode of like an observer, and then taking those observations and then learning information, empowering myself through learning, and then taking that information and applying it. And so I think it was those steps, that kind of really brought me into listening to Smile as a company. It took me about 2 years after really starting to heal myself to get into, other people seeing I was about 315 pounds when this happened. And so now I'm about 170, 175 in weight. And so people saw that transformation. It was easy for them to see that amount of weight loss. And they said, how did you do that? And then people saw a lot of my mindset changing and really wanted to know what I was doing to create this change in my life. And that's really what started listening to Smile, was sharing that process with people. And it just kept growing and growing. And then I was like, well, I guess this is a business now,
Yeah.
So I kind of grew into that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had your own experience of that mindset change through music, the initiation of shifting into that more positive, taking yourself out of that victim mentality, even though you're sick and you don't feel well and you think it's unfair that it's happening to you. It's pretty incredible that something as simple as music could do that. And that's kind of what I'm all about, is realistic tools. I can't make a client or make somebody take their supplements. I can't make them follow a diet. But what tools can I give them that will help them want to do that for themselves, or help them make that certain change for themselves? And that's why it's so interesting to really consider music and the power of that, and understand your story with that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, the one thing I'll just say real quick is people go to blockbuster movies all the time, and they kind of, I don't think, fully appreciate the power of music and the films. Like if you took the soundtrack of a movie and took out the music and just had the movie there, the climax and the exciting builds and peaks and valleys of the film would be very minimal compared to what the music adds to that film. So if you look at that as one side of the coin, and then you flip it over to the other side, like your healing journey, you can provide a soundtrack for your healing journey that empowers you and fuels you to be at a different emotional state to combat or to approach those, and different focus and intentions that you're trying to alleviate in a more, in a new brainwave state, a new mindset. And so it just helps to achieve the goals of healing and release work.
Right. Yeah. The power of changing your frequency, that's what it is, or what's happening when you listen to the music. It's changing you emotionally, also physiologically, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but that's what's actually happening. It's like you can put it's like a tangible thing you can see, you can feel, it's somatic, it's an experience. And so that's such a great way to think about the movies, and think about also the memory that the music creates when you listen to that soundtrack, and you can think about that movie, or that movie makes you feel a certain way. Right off the top of my head, I used to love, I was a big sports movie fan, which is funny because I'm not like a big sports player, but I watched The Replacements, which is a football movie. But the soundtrack was like 90s, and there was something about that music because I loved the ending when they won the game. Spoiler alert, sorry if you haven't seen it, but they win the game, and it's like he gets the girl, and I think there's one headlight by the Wallflowers or something. And I'm not somebody who would remember something like that. I don't remember quotes with movies. I don't remember specific what I did yesterday, so the fact that I can remember something like that, or remember some of the movies, it just shows you how strong music has that correlation with your brain and your memory.
Yeah. Music is one of the few things that almost activates every part of your brain simultaneously. It's very powerful, and it's one of the reasons that it helps with like Alzheimer's. And it's because it's waking up some of the parts of the brain that are left untouched by the disease. And so it's connecting, those pathways together through activation of the whole. And it's such a powerful tool in so many ways. Music is powerful.
Right. So when it comes to music therapy, I don't really know what that is. I do have one anecdotal story about a client of mine whose boyfriend is currently in music therapy. And I asked her, well, what does he do? And she said that he listens to music with the therapist. And I guess he expresses how he feels while he's listening to the music. And then they dissect that a little bit and why he might feel that way. And so I'm curious to know, maybe music therapy is like other therapies where it's a little bit of a spectrum and there's different methods to it. But what's your experience with music therapy, or how logistically does it work? What's your experience with that?
Yeah. So what I do is a little different than music therapy, and music therapy is very specific. So in my opinion, music therapy is very targeted with tempo and mood of music. There's a lot of times where lyrics are involved in it, and they're targeting certain focuses with people to create movement in the same way that we do with sound healing. It's creating movement of stagnant energy, and they're also wanting to work with the emotional component of the person. And so with me, the difference between that and sound healing, so sound healing would be more of a frequency-based approach, and you're working with things like brainwave entrainment, and things that have been proven like through science to have a specific outcome on a brainwave state, and then using those basis of foundations of frequency, and then kind of incorporating similar properties of music therapy, based on tempo, emotional state, and you're targeting kind of a multifaceted approach. The only difference is that we're really focusing on frequency a little bit more than most of the people do with music therapy. So, but yeah, I think they're similar, but they're a little different. You know what I mean? And just the approach, but the outcome is always the same. You're wanting to target the individual to create movement of stagnant energy or some kind of trauma, some kind of disease or pain that, and just the mindset that goes along with all of that. It's very understandable and justified when someone is given a diagnosis of like cancer or, some kind of challenging disease that they have to overcome. And it's overwhelming, and it sometimes can feel hopeless and stressful and depressive, to be in those states. And so if music can be a tool that is introduced, I believe that it helps to shift the mindset first, through an emotional component. And then the second thing is empowering people to kind of build on this tool, breath work, mindfulness techniques, intention settings, mantras, things that can really help, like you said, amplify your vibrational state to kind of rise out of those holes that we can fall into sometimes when we're dealing with challenging things like that.
And when we're lifted into that vibrational state, there's innate healing that happens. There's your body, from what I understand, from what I've learned about the nervous system and just our physiology, when we are in that higher vibration, the body can do its thing. The body is allowed to repair and release and clean up things, detoxify. And so something as simple as that has the power to give your body the tools or facilitate that innate healing, that innate intelligence that we have, which is really cool. And so when you say frequency, what do you mean? Let's talk about that. What do you mean when you say frequency, essentially?
Yeah, so hertz, like Hz, so like let's say 520 hertz, right? 528 hertz, the frequency of love, we'll just say that's a C note. But the vibrations or the oscillations per second is what the hertz is measuring. So it's the vibrations per second that frequency is. And so it's an actual measurement, of the vibrations per second. And you're talking about a frequency, which is when you play the note on a piano or a guitar, there's a vibration that occurs with that string. And so that oscillations per second is measured by hertz. And so that's what we're talking about, is the actual vibrations of that note, of the music that's being played. And then basically using that as a foundation to then tune all the instruments around that and focus on that note. So that's being delivered in the song. And we have a targeted focus or intention for that song that's very specific, towards whatever we're focused on. So that will change with each kind of ailment or condition that we're targeting.
So everything has a frequency.
Yeah,
that is a living thing, or even not, because I guess an instrument is not a living thing, but it has a frequency, but that's because we're creating it. But everything that is a living thing has a frequency to it.
Yes. Yeah. Everything in our perceived reality right now is a vibration of sound or light in some form or fashion.
Yeah. And so ideally, or not ideally, actually, it's kind of a fact, our organs could have a specific frequency, like our intestines could have a frequency. Is there an actual frequency to the intestines?
Yeah. So the research that I would point people to is Royal Raymond Rife. Really amazing. I would consider him like Tesla, And so there's two guys, Wilhelm Reich and then Royal Raymond Rife. Both of these guys. Wilhelm Reich studied under Sigmund Freud, and he studied a lot of things that Sigmund Freud kind of said there wasn't anything there, and he ended up breaking away and doing his own research with the human body and with vibration and kind of polarity. And then you had Royal Raymond Rife, who really studied down to light and sound frequencies and was working with bacteria and viruses and studying how to get the resonant frequency. And when he found the resonant frequency where it would destroy the outer membrane of like the virus, it would kill it and it would leave all the tissues around it unaffected. And so he was really the one that really got the movement and thought of like every organ and cell in the body having, and even viruses and bacteria having their own frequencies. And when those resonant frequencies were hit, like for an organ, it would help to rebalance. It's almost like you were talking about memory, where you're giving the organ the memory of what the vibration is of health, optimal health. And so it helps to bring it back into alignment. Now, with the viruses and the cells, it was actually targeting the resonant frequency to destroy the outer membrane, which would then, help that to die and not be attacking the body any longer. So he was very influential in pretty much everything with modern day sound healing that we're doing. It's very powerful stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can use frequency to both balance and heal, but also, I don't want to use that word. I want to use like a target something that is harmful to the body. I actually did watch a TED talk, and I don't remember the name of the guy, but he did talk about how specific frequencies were being experimented to kill off cancer cells.
Yeah.
And it was a profound TED talk. It was so short. It was like 20 minutes. And I was like, so there's something to this. It's not, yes, we have the energetic and the spiritual aspect of it. It all relates, but there is something to this that we can see, that we can physically with our own eyes see and understand. And it's different from just picking up your headphones and listening to music, that's one thing that maybe I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but like, we just went through all of the intention behind it and how it can be thought out, how we can listen to frequencies to heal specific traumas, balance out specific organs, help the gut, help digestion, all of that. And that's what makes it different from just listening to your favorite band, right?
Yeah. So the difference between like entertainment-based music and more intentional is I use this kind of metaphor a lot, which is if you went to an art gallery and you had two painters and they were standing in front of their paintings, each one, had done a painting, and you went to the first one and he said, and you said, "Hey, I really like your painting. Could you explain to me what this is about?" And he said, I just kind of threw the paint on there. It looks pretty cool. What do you think about it? And then versus the other person who, instead of an organic, creative approach to it, had more of a mathematical based layout and was creating like sacred geometry, things that were based on mathematical, layouts and just very precise. There, rulers and taking time to draw this out and showing just a divine alignment on the canvas, and then went into sharing the mathematics with you, sharing the breakdown of what the numbers mean. So what that does is it draws in the listener, and it's teaching the listener and the viewer to have a more open mind and reframing kind of the way that they're seeing reality around them, especially when these numbers and mathematics relate to the creation of our universe, the creation of our planets, nature, plants, farming. And so you start seeing the connection between all of the things. So what this does is it's in a sense kind of lifting the curtain, showing people behind the curtain and kind of the relation to the interconnectedness and the interdependence that life is. Like we can have the soil, but if you don't have the rain and the sun and the, microbial life in the soil, you're not going to have the healthy plants that you need. And so there's an interdependence. It's not just one or two things, it's 5 or 6 things, and sometimes 10 things or 20 things that are into the process of this life that we know it, right? So the same thing is happening with the sound and the music. It's the interaction of the frequency and the entertainment properties and the accessibility of the music, but then it's also teaching the listener to have a more of a deep listening experience and to be focused on the music in a different way, like separating the instruments. Can you hear the bass? Can you hear the drums? Can you hear the guitar? Can you separate those instruments? And as you're teaching someone those basics of separation, then they're able to start listening to the whole in a completely different way. And so that new listening experience is it's also teaching the brain. So what ends up happening is through consistent use and consistent exposure, you're creating what I call a more expanded sound palette, just like a taste palette. And you develop different taste patterns for things like, someone might drink wine for the first time and not like it, but it becomes an acquired taste. That taste palette grows. And so it's the same thing like using ginger as a palate cleanser. And then you start, taking these expressions of different foods and kind of growing that sound palette. Your listening palette is the same way. We have a mundane kind of traditional sounds that were introduced. Your home, you wake up in the morning, it's kind of the same sounds. You go to the workplace, it's kind of the same sounds. It's very repetitive. But when you start introducing new frequencies, you're expanding that sound palette. And then what ends up happening is the brain starts noticing these frequencies in everyday life. So you'll hear people say, I'm hearing the birds more, or I'm hearing engines hum, or I'm hearing the leaves in the trees more than normal. Is it because my ears are changing? And I said, no, it's your consciousness. It's your brain is changing and evolving and taking in more frequencies now. So it's saying, hey, you're listening to this consistently. I'm going to bring this back to you. You're into your awareness, these new things that I'm seeing in the environment or hearing in the environment. And you're becoming more aware of them now in your everyday processes. And so you're expanding through sound. Sound is a very powerful tool for consciousness expansion as well.
Yeah. And you can take that same outlook and think about it with movement and think about it with food as well. It's like the more that you are aware of what's in your food or of what your meal is consisted of, or the more you're aware of how you move, what your relationship to exercise in your own body is, it changes, again, that whole consciousness shift, but you become more in control of your whole environment and of your health situation, of how you see yourself in the future. Things, you're also more present too, because you know that. So understanding all of the information about frequencies and appreciating it, it changes the experience rather than turning on. I mean, yeah, we can still listen to Michael Jackson, we can still listen to our favorite music, but when you go into something with that intention and you go into something prepared, and you know this has a bigger purpose, it changes the experience completely. And it's almost like, I don't know, like my brother-in-law the other day was like, I was like, we stopped watching TV a lot. Like I don't really need Netflix anymore. We share the Netflix account, and I don't want to pay for Netflix anymore. So my sister's like trying to get me to keep not paying for it, but she doesn't understand why I don't really want to listen to it or watch it. And they were like, don't you ever just want to shut your brain off? And I was like, not really anymore, but I remember that feeling.
Yeah.
When you're so overstimulated and you're so stressed out, and I love them, but they're working all the time, and I understand the need to just want to watch something and shut your brain off, but it's not shutting your brain off. In fact, it's potentially creating more stress in your life. Whereas what you really want to be doing is listening to that, like having those intentional practices that are therapeutic, because then it's going to do more. Like your brain doesn't have to think about anything, but it's going to be working different parts of your brain, which is not shutting your brain off. It's actually activating the parts, but it feels like you're shutting your brain off. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think people do not fully appreciate the power of spoken word. And so like when you listen to music, a lot of traditional music these days, as well as entertainment, like movies, films, things like that, when you look at a lot of the violence and murder and things that you're exposed to through these movies, it does have an effect on the mind. And the other thing is like in pop music, the repetition, like if you're listening to a song and you really like it, you might listen to it 2 or 3 times in a day, like, because you're like, this is so cool, I enjoy this. But if you stop and think about the lyrics that are being built into your subconscious through this exposure of over and over, and especially young people, you look at the exposure of some of these words where it's like very depressive, very negative, and even violent in nature, or even just lower vibrational, if you want to say that, right? And then you think about like stuff like Bob Marley or something that's like very positive and uplifting, and then you think about repetitious listens to this and how the effect it has on your subconscious. And so this day and age, everyone's constantly talking about raising vibration, being in alignment with manifesting, and all of these things. And so people are starting to come to terms with the things that you speak are really becoming your reality. And they're doing that through the repetitious, voicings of this music, of these words that we tell ourselves. Like you wake up and you say, oh, I'm fat. I've done this. Everyone's done this. I'm fat. Right. I need to do better. And you keep saying these things to yourself. But if you can catch yourself And Joe Dispenza, I think, is awesome at really breaking through people, where he says the most powerful thing you can do is catch yourself in the moment, saying the things that you don't want to say, and then switch it. And that transmuting, he said, is 10 times more powerful than generating it from like a point of origin. Like if you catch it and transform it, then you're turning it into an energy and you're making a shift. And so I think that if we can get people to understand the music you listen to, the news, the movies, the people you hang out with, even if they're on a lower vibrational and they're constantly complaining and constantly negative, then maybe you need to reassess if those people really need to have the time of your space, because it does affect you. And so I think like these things are just all tools, you know, all of these things can be tools. And it's not that you can't have entertainment and do some things sometimes, but I think people don't realize the amount of time that these things are occupying in their life that really do have an outcome on their health, you know?
Right. Because of the structure of our culture and our society, we don't think about how we relax. We don't think about how we reduce stress. Our idea of reducing stress is maybe, you know, drinking alcohol and I was one of these people. My idea of reducing stress and kind of checking out was drinking and watching TV, or, you know, socializing, which is also, there can be a level of stress reduction in those activities. But the act of intentionally trying to shift yourself out of that low vibration is what is really going to make the biggest difference, and what's really going to, even if you live that crazy life, even if you have that 9-to-5 job and, you know, you have kids and you're stressed out, you don't necessarily have to completely change your whole life or change your whole career. You could simply just implement these tools of music vibration, of becoming aware and heightening your awareness or heightening your consciousness, shifting it, and you could have a higher quality of life, you know, and maybe other things will come to light of how you can change or how you can surround yourself in a better environment, or maybe you don't want that job. But in order to get to that moment, you have to put that work in. It's a practice. Actually, that's one of my next questions, is like, you mentioned something about the memory and how your body remembers that state, remembers that vibration, and you become more aware. And I think that it's the same, like, if we want to change our diet, if we want to change, like make sure that we stay consistent with new behavioral changes, it's a practice. It's something that we can't just listen to it, you know, for 1 hour and then expect there to be change. And the way I see that is because the body or the brain cannot be in a state that it's not familiar with. You know, like I have anxiety, and so I can't shift myself out of anxiety if I don't know what it's like to not be anxious. So we have to practice this state of relaxation, and we have to continue to go back to that, so that right now when I'm speaking with you, which is something that a year ago I would not have been able to do this, because I was so anxious and so like cognitively unclear. I couldn't keep my train of thought because I was in fight or flight. Now, because of practice, I'm able to stop and be like, okay, I can remember that feeling, and my body can go from there. My brain goes back to that relaxed state, and that does more than just cognition. It does a lot for my gut too. I don't have a stomach ache. I don't have, you know, my GI issues when I'm speaking in this state. So yes, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, so I'll share, I'll be vulnerable. So when I was, before I got sick, I was going through a lot of anxiety. I was in size 48 pants. That just tells you. Right now I'm in a size 30 pant, you know, so it's like my waist is a size 30. So I was in a size 48 pants, and I would very rarely leave my house. I had so much anxiety, social anxiety, being around people. It was very, very challenging. And I was always, I would say I'm an HSP, you know, highly sensitive person. There's a lot of things that like sounds and things that would overstimulate me. So it was almost kind of like being almost like a high functioning autistic
I was
person, you
going to say
know?
that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was very challenging. And the thing that I was very much like you, I said the same things like Bruce Lipton with the epigenetics, right? And talking about your mindset is above your genetic. You can always change chemical processes inside of the body with the first thought of your mindset, and the mindset creates these chemical reactions that over time will change the makeup of your body, and that you can combat different genetic issues. I mean, it's been proven through his stem cell research and all of the research they've done with epigenetics, how powerful the mind really is with the body. But I was saying the same thing that you said, which was for manifesting, for example, you know, it's, you know, if someone has never known what it is like to be financially stable or to have a thriving income versus just struggling to paycheck, it's sometimes hard. Like you can look at sports players or, you know, Hollywood celebrities and say, oh, they're making millions and millions of dollars. I can try to imagine what that's like, but unless you really have made those kind of, you know, paychecks or jobs that are coming through, it's really hard to imagine for most people what that would be like to live that way. So one of the things that I started really doing was getting into the verbiage, you know, the vocabulary, and I started studying people like Yogananda. I was looking at the Master Key System, Rich Dad Poor Dad, a lot of these different books that are out there that people can get into, and what I noticed for me just through my personal study was that I had a resistance, especially Yogananda. He would have a thing that he wanted you to say, I'm rich, over and over again. I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. And I noticed that I had such a resistance to saying that because I wasn't rich. And so I said, I just don't know that I can say that. I don't know what it's like to be that. So it's hard for me to hold that vibration. But what he wanted you to do was repetitiously beat yourself down, that keep saying it over and over and over until your subconscious and your being did not have a resistance to it anymore. And so the thing that's interesting about it is to actually put in the work to, you know, start making those changes. And it's just like going to the gym. You're not going to have the beach body in the first week or the first month. It's going to be 6 months or a year in where you start really seeing the change. And I think that's what's hard for people. It was what was hard for me, was to put in that time, because during all those times, it's like those sports movies you're watching, right? All those like video montages of them working out before the big game and all
Exactly.
the
That's why it's so inspirational, right?
yeah. So, and I think that the music is like in the montages, just like at the, you know, they're always listening to some really powerful, uplifting, inspirational song that's fueling them, and then they have that big moment. And I think for me, the big moment was realizing taking control of my food. When I was able to say no to bad foods and to start taking more control of my food, everything in my life changed, because it's one of the things that you're doing 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a day with snacks. You're interacting with food that much. So if you can learn to be in control of that and use that as the first pivotal moment, I think then your meditation practice, your mindset, all of those things will start coming behind it, because food is such a powerful part of your day and so consistent in your day. So if you can gain control of food, I really believe that the other stuff becomes more easy to have changes with, you know?
Mm-hmm. And the ego or the desire to learn about food or educate yourself. It's funny because food and diet, well, we are very defensive about. I have found this with learning, you know, working with other people. As soon as you start touching on that topic of what do you eat, it's funny. It's like you get the people who lie, and you think they're lying because they tell you what they think you want to hear. And then you get the people who, when you say, you know, are you eating organic or are you prioritizing high quality food, then you get a little hesitation. It's such a personal thing. And we know as humans instinctually that it's so important for our health. And it's one thing that we solely control. And so there is that, it's kind of like that stage of, denial, and then you have the acceptance, and then you have the responsibility that you're taking for yourself, and then you have that shift of consciousness, and everything from there becomes easier because you stop thinking about it from that victim mentality, or you stop thinking about it from, well, I can't change my food, or I need to eat this, or a lot in the gut health community, a lot of it is, I can't eat anything, I get sick. No matter what I eat, doesn't matter what I eat. That's how I was. I would be eating, I would not eat for, I did a lot of fasting, which made me more sick and malnourished. And then when I would eat, I would feel sick. And it was just continually this repetition of thinking, I can't eat anything, no matter what I eat, I have no control. And then it took that shift of consciousness and the education and the desire to learn rather than just kind of brushing it off. And so, yeah, that's huge for change, for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let me see what else I want to, okay. We talked about the the frequency specifically. We didn't talk about the Schumann resonance. I don't know if you want to, I do have some thoughts on brain scans, or if you know specifically of how the music impacts the brain, what specific part of the brain. I'll say something about that, but maybe if you want to talk about the Schumann resonance, because I do find that very interesting.
Yeah, so the Schumann resonance is Winifred Odo Schumann, and I always have a hard time remembering his name, but it's just such an odd name. But so he discovered the Schumann resonance in like 52, 53, and it really was proven in like the early 60s that the ionosphere and the Earth created this tension and actually ultimately a vibration. And they call it the electromagnetic pulse of the Earth, or the heartbeat of the Earth. And so it's basically in perfect alignment with the alpha brainwave state. And so it's basically the Earth and the human brain are kind of resonating at the same baseline frequencies. Wow. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. And so they were doing studies in the 60s showing that when they would put people in bunkers and cut off that frequency from them, that they would have highly depressed states and really affected emotionally. And then when they would introduce the sound back into the room, then people would go back to feeling somewhat normal and acting normal. So they were showing that us having a connection to that vibration of the Earth is doing something, keeping us optimized in our health and our balance.
In tune, right? Yes,
in tune, yes. And so it's very interesting. And as far as the frequencies with the brain, what we're doing with the listening to smile music, we call the LTS method, which is basically we're using a low amplitude binaural beat, which is, I'll explain what that is real quick. A binaural beat means that there's two tones, a left speaker and a right speaker in your headphones. And then let's say that we were using 100 hertz in the left ear and 104 hertz in the right ear. The difference between those two frequencies is 4 hertz, between 100 and 104 there. And so we got what ends up happening is the brain, when the ears are listening, it creates this wobble because the frequencies are not the same. So it creates this mm-hmm. And the brain does not like that at all. It's like very disruptive. So what the brain does is it takes the right and left hemisphere and it synchronizes them. So then it creates one tone. And so it hears one note, but it hears the difference. And they can't really prove why this is, but they see through the research that the brain is actually hearing one note, the 4 hertz, the difference between these two frequencies. And so what ends up happening is the brain starts to mimic that frequency and it steps down to meet that frequency, right? So it's almost like if someone was humming a song and then someone else started humming with it. That's what the brain is basically doing, is it's humming along with that tone in a sense. and it's stepping the brainwave activity into a more relaxed state. So 4 to 8 hertz would be the theta brainwave pattern. And so what it's doing is it steps that down. And then why that's beneficial is for like pain management, anxiety, restlessness. 4 to 8 hertz would really help. It's the theta pattern is what we hit just before REM sleep. So it's like you're stepping the brain into this twilight, like in between sleep and in between awake. And it's very powerful for reprogramming the subconscious. It's very powerful to get relaxed for bed. It's very powerful for helping to relieve anxiety. So these are the kind of focus with the frequency that we're doing to help create the tool that's helping people with like pain management, anxiety, all kinds of different things, you know, insomnia, things like that. So
and stopping the in my last episode, or 2 episodes ago, I talked about the nervous system and this positive feedback loop that happens with the stress response, where the brain never gets the signal to stop releasing stress hormone, to stop shifting us into that fight or flight. And it's simple things, you know, it's simple things like being in a bunker that where you can't get the frequency, or being exposed to electromagnetic fields, or, you know, all of this stuff can continue that feedback loop of the stress response. And so one thing that is interesting is like when that happens is the amygdala gets bigger. The amygdala, which is like the primal reptilian, you know, that's where fear, doubt is, that starts to get enlarged. And then the hippocampus, the part of the brain, shrinks. And so the hippocampus holds our safe memories, you know, our non-traumatic memories, and it's like our safety area, I guess you could think of it. And so I was curious, and I was thinking, well, this music must be activating the hippocampus, or it must be doing something where maybe those different parts of the brain that are enlarged due to stress, due to dysfunction, can shrink back to their normal place, and then the other parts can become healthy and large, and that will stop that stress response, shift us into what is known as the ventral vagal nerve, and that is more of social engagement, of, you know, what high functioning body. So that's really cool to think about what binaural beats do.
Yeah. It's the hypothalamus, and there's just so much here, because they've even started studying different styles of music trigger different sides, different hemispheres of the brain based off of the scales and the chord progressions that are used in the music can be different, affect the brain in different ways. Then you've got tempo. The tempo of the music can affect different parts of the brain in different ways. And then you have frequency. And so it's like, that's what's really interesting about frequency-minded music, is you're dealing with tempo, you're dealing with different sets of chord progressions and different styles and scale systems of music. But then you also have the frequency, which is another additional layer that most of the traditional music isn't really focused on. It's not that the notes and the other traditional entertainment music don't have frequencies, because they do. But as we got into with the Paul Chek podcast, we talked a little bit about the conspiracy and some of the darker sides of like modern music, right? And so so all of that plays a part, and it's really hard to double down. It depends on really what you're focusing on the most. But it really, for me, I think one of the most powerful things is like the hippocampus and the hypothalamus, and a lot of the parts of the brain where you're really like even the pineal gland, right? Like when you get into that activation, and Dr. Joe Dispenza is really into that now. Like it's like his new thing that he's really into. And so if anyone doesn't know about that, that's something I would highly suggest looking into, because the pineal gland is really under attack by modern society through the waves of the
blue light.
Yeah, everything. And just even down to drinking water sometimes too. So It's like tap water.
Was it
Yeah.
fluoride sensitive
Yeah,
too?
fluoride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
the pineal gland is responsible for some melatonin production as well. So, and there are some Qigong and Qigong exercises that I do with my clients that is kind of activating. It's like a pineal exercise. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to really digging into the music and learning more about the specific frequencies and just trying to have it be as thoughtful and as intentional as possible with the movement and the breath work that I do. One thing that I found interesting when I was reading my vagal nerve book, Accessing the Healing Powers to the Vagus Nerve by Stanley Rosenberg, he talks about how when he does specific therapies that activate the vagus nerve, the therapeutic session is so much more effective. And so I think that this music specifically could be used where if you're about to go into a massage, maybe even a talk therapy, maybe, a move to heal session with me or something that, in any situation, especially if it's more stressful, but particularly if you're about to do something that's therapeutic, getting yourself into that state and allowing your brain to use those parts of the brain that reduce stress, it can make the therapy more effective. And because our body's ready to receive that and in a healing state already. So, okay. I love learning about all of this. I'm very new to it, but it makes sense. It has an intuitive element to it. And that's really my bottom line in a way, is what can we do to hone intuition? What can we do to change our health and our relationship to our health without necessarily needing to take a bunch of supplements or follow a restrictive diet? What other options are there? Because we didn't really get to the specific SIBO or gut health topics, but there's so much contradiction around healing the gut. And a lot of it is focused on take the test so we know what you have, which I'm all for testing, but then treat the test results, take a supplement to kill the bacteria. And again, I'm all for the appropriate supplements. I'm all for protocols, but we stop there, and the clients that I see again and again, they are confused, they're frustrated because they're doing all the right things, they're eating the right foods, they're taking the right supplements. And so I want to bring them this other aspect, this other perspective, which music has the potential alone to help them heal their gut. And that's simply put, right?
Yeah. I know this will probably sound weird, and we'll just get weird for a second, but the gut health it's intelligent, right? So they're finding, like, through the Heart Math Institute, the neural networks inside of the heart, where the heart is actually communicating to the brain more than the brain communicates to the heart. This is something they've been studying. And so you start looking at how the gut health is directly affected for mental health in people. Absolutely. They're starting to see the connection. So the heart, the brain, and the gut are just very, very powerful parts of extensions of our consciousness, right? Our brain. And so what's interesting about it is telling people, like, for instance, a lot of the clients I work with, I have them play music into their gut. And even women that are experiencing hormonal problems or cycle problems, we're using like 210.42 hertz, which is the frequency of the moon. We're finding it very beneficial for them playing it directly into the womb. And then the same thing with the gut health, like there's frequencies from Raymond Reich that we work with the gut, and then also just talking to their body in a way that's loving, and people don't realize, like, oh, I'm fat, I'm sick of this, blah, 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 just constant complaints. But if we can shift those complaints into more gratitude-based structured vocabulary, and then really focused on talking to their body in a way that is empowering, because words, again, are so powerful in how we talk to ourselves. And this is something I've experienced in the last 2 years. My business has had monumental growth. My personal life has had monumental growth. And I attribute it all to reading more positive books, changing my vocabulary, talking to my body in a way that's more positive, and surrounding myself with people that want my success, not people that are tearing me down or telling me I can't do things. Those people had to get cut out of my life, you know? And so
Which is hard to
these
do.
changes, yes, it is. It is hard
Mm-hmm.
to do. But it's something that really creates movement in your life by doing the gratitude and the positive vocabulary. It's like one of the first easiest things, costs no money. It's just putting in the work to do it.
Exactly. Putting in the work,
Yeah.
and that's like step one. So well, I am very grateful that I found you guys. And I think that this music is going to help, my clients a lot, myself a lot. And, even thinking about putting it on the womb, like at some point I do want children, and I'm going to have to get headphones that I can just put on my belly. And like, there's music will just be, I think I told you this a while back, where the pandemic, and I'm very much into the politics of everything. I like to listen to different news podcasts. A lot of people don't. I like to know about what's going on. And so my life did not have music in it. And I was a dancer, and music was such a huge part of my life. And so over the past year and a half, I haven't listened to music. I've only filled my head with the kind of the worst stuff possible, right? And so inviting music back into my life, it really, like, there was like a very emotional moment that I had with it when I first started listening. I think it was the first time we spoke, I think I went and listened to it, and I could feel this release and this shift of, okay, life can be happy. Life, like, I can think about my future differently. And just simply inviting that music back into my life was such a huge thing. And I think a lot of people who are struggling with their health, they might not listen to music, or they don't listen to it in this intentional way. So I'm looking forward to including that in my practice and seeing where it takes myself and my business. I would like to end with, number one, how people can listen to this music. So I am an affiliate with Listening to Smile. And that means that you can go, I'll put the link in the show notes. You can go to that site and you can use the code BetterHealth to get 40% off of any album. If you're interested in becoming an affiliate, you can also use that same link. Is that correct?
Yeah, the listeningtosmile.com. You can go and fill out the affiliate. It's at the top of the page.
And why don't you talk about don't you talk a little bit about the business and how it's a little bit different, and also the affiliate program?
Yeah. So the traditional music industry is raping and pillaging musicians worldwide. There's no other way to put it. So for a musician to make $3,000 US on Spotify, they have to have 1 million streams. And most artists will never reach 1 million streams in their lifetime because they don't have the PR, the press to get that out there. And there's a lot of competition. I want to say there's like 30,000 songs a day that are uploaded to Spotify per day. And so you've got a lot of competition to break through for people to even know that you're out there. So with that being said, the average Spotify employee makes somewhere around $110,000 a year, but they tell the artist that they can't pay them. So an artist is making 0.001 or something of a penny for every play that they get. And it's just really ridiculous. I don't even know the specifics because it changes, so much, but they're not getting paid. So we wanted to create a model with our business that was supporting myself and the other musicians who work with me for our time and for our craft and our experience of creating this music. And then also offering to the people working with the music a real karmic interaction that is allowing them to have multiple avenues of ways to recoup their investment in the supporting of our company and the work that we're doing, and then also giving them extra added tools that can add more incentives and more engagement with their clients and customers through their businesses, and then ultimately creating tools that the end user can really have breakthroughs in their life through different things that, just like I, with MS and colon cancer, My mother had cancer. We used the music with her. She's cancer free. There's tons of people that have used this music. And so we wanted to create interactions like that. So we wanted to create a new paradigm, a new shift of like a win-win scenario where everyone's getting something from this interaction together and adding value to each other through that. And we believe that this is the new paradigm of business, this type of approach and this type of outlook. And then basically, yeah, for the affiliate program, would, purchase through you. They save $120 off for the year. And then you're able to have, support for your business through that sale as well. And then basically they're able to utilize the music with what we call a multi-use license, which means they can use it on videos, podcasts, they can use it on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, all those different scenarios. They can also create sales inside of their programs and workshops and courses with the music. They can have new music every month, which I think is the coolest part of the program.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I've only been 2 months in, and I kind of forgot about that. And then November 1st came around and I was like, this is so cool. I didn't realize I'd be so excited about this, but I am.
Yeah. And so it's in line with the astrology and the current events. So it's something for the collective, and it gives you something new to work with each month with your clients and also for yourself personally. And so it's really neat. We really enjoy, working with people in this way.
Yeah, no, that's, it's really cool the way that you guys are going about your business. And I like that word. What did you say? Karmic system.
Yeah. And gratitude payments. So when someone refers someone to the program and they sign up, they get a gratitude payment, which is basically saying thanks for spreading the word.
Right. And it's really cool for somebody like me who has this online virtual business. I got social media, I've got a YouTube channel, a podcast. And so music is a huge part of that. You want to have background music, and to know that you're using it legally, appropriately, you have a copyright. It's just nice to have like a whole library of really not only just any music. It's not like stock music. This is intentional, frequency-minded music that goes along with my principles. And so I'm going to share this with other practitioners and see if they're interested in even just that aspect alone of having copyright is really cool. So, I'm going to have an event at the end of this month, I believe, that will be a sonic meditation. It will be virtual. We'll be using the November music, very gut-centered, very my move to heal sessions. So if you're interested in that, you can click the link in the show notes, and you can sign up for that. You can jump on my email list. You can go to my website, betterhealthbymonica.com, and sign up for my email list or any of my opt-ins. And then you'll be on my email list, and I'll tell you about those events. I'd like to have them every month just to grow this community and share this experience. Really, it is it just simply listening to music and allowing our brains and our bodies and our nervous system to shift, and that will help our gut health so much, and our mindset. So thank you. I don't know if you want to end with anything else, any other thoughts today?
Just telling people that it does not take a huge commitment to do this. You're talking 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, so 20 minutes a day total. And within 2 weeks, people could see really powerful changes, and shifts in that, just in a 2-week period, So
I have already.
Yeah. So it's not a huge commitment. It's something that's easy to do. So
great. We're all about realistic tools. So, okay, Ian, thank you for taking the time to do this. And I'll be in touch with you, of course, in the future.
Okay. Thank you.